Today we're jumping into one of those questions that, well, it feels huge, doesn't it? Why is there something rather than nothing?
It really is the fundamental question. It stops you in your tracks. And different thinkers, different traditions, they've all had a crack at it.
Absolutely. A lot of approaches look at the world, the complexity, the design maybe.
That's right, empirical approaches.
But today we're exploring something different, a purely rational answer, one that doesn't really lean on observing the universe, but more on abstract logic.
And it comes from this towering figure, Ibn Sina. You might know him better as Avicenna in the West.
Right. Avicenna, tell us a bit about him.
Well, he was an incredible Persian Muslim philosopher, a polymath, really. His influence was just vast. Medicine, for instance, his canon of medicine was studied in Europe for literally centuries.
Wow.
Centuries.
Yeah. But for us today, the key thing is his metaphysics. His ideas became absolutely foundational for the philosophy of religion later on in, well, both the Islamic world and medieval Europe. So a real intellectual heavyweight. And he developed this specific argument we're looking at.
Exactly. It's called the Burhan al-Laidikin, often translated as the proof of the truthful.
The proof of the truthful.
Yeah.
And it's a rational proof for God's existence.
Yes, but importantly, it's built on logic, step-by-step deduction, not starting from, say, scripture or religious experience directly.
Okay. And what's the core idea? You mentioned a distinction.
That's the heart of it. He makes this crucial distinction between necessary existence and contingent existence. And he identifies God as al-wajib al-wujud, the necessary existent.
The necessary existent. Okay, that sounds deep.
It is. It's a very precise philosophical way to conceive of the ultimate reality.
All right, so that's our mission for this deep dive. Unpacking Ibn Sina's proof of the truthful, understanding this necessary versus contingent idea. Stick with us. This is a fascinating journey into a cornerstone of philosophical thought. Okay, let's get started. To really get Ibn Sina's proof, you said we need to understand this difference, first necessary versus contingent truths.
That's the absolute foundation.
Yeah.
Without this, the rest doesn't quite click.
So what is a necessary truth?
A necessary truth is something that just has to be true. It cannot possibly be false. Trying to deny it actually creates a logical contradiction.
Okay, like what? Give us a really clear example.
Sure. Think about all bachelors are unmarried. It's true by definition, right? The very meaning of bachelor includes unmarried.
Right. You can't have a married bachelor. It doesn't make sense.
Exactly. It's a contradiction in terms, or maybe a mathematical one, 2 + 2 = 4. That's not just true here and now. It's true in every possible scenario you could ever imagine. Denying it is just absurd.
Okay, I'm with you. Unavoidably true. So what's the flip side? Contingent truths.
Contingent truths are things that, well, they are true, but they didn't have to be. They could have been false without breaking any laws of logic.
So things that depend on circumstances.
Precisely. For example, it rained yesterday. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. The world wouldn't collapse logically if it hadn't rained. Or Tony got married on a Saturday.
Right. He could have picked a Friday. Or maybe not gotten married at all.
Exactly. There's no inherent necessity about it being Saturday. Or, Jane is 5'3". She exists, she has that height, but she could have been taller, shorter. It's contingent on genetics, nutrition, all sorts of factors.
Got it. And I think you mentioned philosophers sometimes talk about possible worlds here.
Yeah, that's a helpful concept, sort of a thought experiment. If something is true in every possible world, every conceivable reality, then it's necessary.
Like 2 + 2 = 4.
Right. But if it's true in our world, but you can imagine a possible world where it's false.
Like Tony getting married on Wednesday.
Then it's contingent. It helps clarify that fundamental difference.
So as you're listening, maybe think about statements you hear or think today. Are they necessary, like a definition, or contingent, like, well, most things that happen? It's a neat distinction. Okay, so we've got necessary truths and contingent truths sorted. Now, the big move Ibn Sina makes is applying this to existence itself, right?
Exactly. This is where his argument really takes flight. He asks, can we talk about beings in the same way we talk about truths? Are some beings necessary and others contingent?
And his answer is yes.
A resounding yes. He starts with contingent beings. A contingent being is something that exists, but it could have not existed. Its existence isn't part of its essence.
Like this microphone I'm talking into.
Perfect example. It exists, clearly, but it didn't have to. It required materials, design, manufacturing, someone to buy it. Its existence depends on a whole chain of external causes.
And us, people.
Us too. We exist, thankfully. But there was a time before we were born, and we will cease to exist. There's no logical contradiction in imagining a universe without us. Our existence is fundamentally dependent.
Okay, but here's the bit that might stretch the mind a bit. You said earlier he applies this to the whole universe.
He does. And this is crucial. He argues that since the universe is composed entirely of contingent parts, every atom, every star, every galaxy could have failed to exist, then the sum total, the entire universe itself, must also be contingent.
So even if the universe has always existed or is incredibly vast, it's still made of stuff that didn't have to be here.
That's his point. Think of a chain.
Huh?
Even an infinitely long chain, if every single link in that chain is, say, made of rust-prone iron, the whole chain is still rust-prone. Being infinite doesn't change the fundamental nature of its parts.
Okay. The collection of contingent things is still contingent. That makes sense.
So if the universe is contingent, it needs an explanation for its existence. Just like the microphone or us, it can't explain itself.
Which leads us to the other category.
The necessary being. This is the opposite. A necessary being is something that cannot not exist. Its very essence is existence. It doesn't depend on anything else. It exists by its own nature eternally.
And denying its existence would be like denying 2 + 2 = 4, a logical contradiction.
That's the idea. Its non-existence is literally impossible. And this is what Ibn Sina identifies as God al-Wajib al-Wujud.
The necessary existent.
He even laid it out quite systematically. He said reality contains 3 possibilities for anything you can conceive of.
Okay. First, impossible beings. Things that just can't exist because their concept is contradictory, like a square circle.
Right. Got it.
Second, contingent beings. Mumkin al-wujud. Things that can exist but don't have to. They need a cause. That's us, the mic, the planets, the whole show.
Basically everything we see and experience.
Pretty much. And third, the necessary being. Wajib al-wujud. The one thing that must exist, whose essence guarantees its existence.
Sets a very clear framework. Impossible, possible but needs a cause, and must exist.
It really structures the argument.
So when you look around, you see all this could be, could not be stuff, and it forces the question, is there anything at all that isn't like that? Anything that just has to be? All right, we have the building blocks, necessary versus contingent existence. Now, let's walk through the actual proof, the Buran al-Dukin. How does Ibn Sina construct the argument step by step?
Okay, so it's a logical progression, starting from what we know, or what seems undeniable.
Yeah.
Step 1, contingent beings exist.
Simple enough. Look around. We exist. The studio exists. The planet exists. All stuff that could have not existed seems undeniable.
Right. Step 2, every contingent being needs a cause or an explanation for why it exists rather than not existing.
Also seems intuitive. Things don't just spring into existence from absolute nothingness for no reason, right?
Yeah.
Their existence needs accounting for.
Exactly. Something must explain why its potential for existence was actualized. Now, step 3, a contingent being cannot cause itself.
Because it would have to exist before it existed to do the causing.
Precisely. It's a straightforward, logical point. You can't pull yourself into existence out of non-existence.
Okay, makes sense.
Step 4. Therefore, the cause of any contingent being must be either another contingent being or it must be the necessary being.
Those are the only options left, logically speaking. The cause is either dependent itself or it's not.
Correct. Now, step 5. This is a really key step. An infinite chain or series of contingent beings causing other contingent beings cannot ultimately explain existence. The infinite regress problem. Explain this bit because it trips people up sometimes. It's not just saying infinity is impossible, is it?
No, it's more subtle than that. Imagine an endless line of dominoes, each one knocking over the next. That explains why this domino fell the one before it hit it,
Okay.
but it doesn't explain why the dominoes are falling at all. Even if the chain goes back infinitely, you still haven't explained the motion itself. The entire infinite chain still requires something outside of it to get it started, or perhaps better, to sustain its being falling.
Right. So even an infinite chain of things that need a cause still needs a cause. The whole chain itself is still contingent because every part of it is contingent.
You've got it. An infinite series of dependencies doesn't somehow add up to independence. It just pushes the fundamental question back forever without answering it. Why is there a chain of falling dominoes rather than no dominoes, or dominoes standing still?
Okay. So infinite regress doesn't solve the why anything exists problem.
It just defers it infinitely, which means if an infinite chain of contingent causes isn't the ultimate answer, we have to go back to step 4.
And the only other option was?
Step 6. Therefore, there must exist a necessary being. A being whose existence isn't contingent, doesn't depend on anything else, and can serve as the ultimate explanation for why there are contingent beings at all.
And that leads directly to the conclusion. Step 7. A necessary existent, which Ibn Sina identifies with God, must exist.
That's the logical outcome of the steps. He even put it very starkly, something like, impossible things never exist. Contingent things, before they exist, are just possibilities needing a cause. Only the necessary just is.
Wow. It's quite elegant when laid out like that. So, listener, think about that infinite chain idea. Does pushing the explanation back forever actually explain anything fundamentally, or do you eventually need something that doesn't need explaining itself? Let's linger on this point about the whole universe being contingent, because that feels like the most, well, ambitious part of the argument. Not just my microphone, but everything.
It is a profound step, absolutely. And it counters a common intuition, perhaps, that the universe itself is the ultimate reality, maybe eternal, maybe self-sufficient.
Right. How does he really nail that down?
Yeah.
That the collection doesn't escape the contingency of its parts.
It goes back to that idea that the nature of the parts determines the nature of the whole, in this respect at least. If you have a collection of things and every single one of them shares the property of could have not existed, then the collection itself shares that property.
So adding up infinite maybes doesn't equal a must be.
Exactly. Think of it like a pile of sand. Every grain is contingent. The whole pile is just a pile of contingent grains. It doesn't magically become necessary just because there are lots of grains.
Okay, so the entire cosmos, everything we know, all of space-time and matter energy,
Yeah.
is like that pile of sand. It exists, but it didn't have to.
That's the core claim. And just like your microphone needed an external cause, or Tony's wedding date needed planning outside of Tony himself, the universe as a whole, being contingent, requires an explanation outside itself.
And that explanation, that cause, cannot be another contingent thing.
Or we're back to the infinite regress problem we just discussed.
So it must be the necessary being.
It must be necessary. It's the only way to ground the existence of this vast but ultimately optional universe, this tapestry of dust and fire, as one might say, this bubble upon the sea of non-being. It didn't have to inflate.
That phrase, a bubble upon the sea of non-being, really captures it. The sheer precariousness of it all.
It does. It highlights the fundamental optionality of everything we perceive.
It really is a staggering thought. To sit with the idea that the entire cosmos is, in a logical sense, optional. It really makes you think differently about reality.
And for Ibn Sina, that very optionality points logically, inescapably, to something that isn't optional.
So Ibn Sina doesn't just stop at proving a necessary existence exists. He actually goes on to deduce its attributes, right? What kind of being it must be, based purely on the logic.
Yes, this is a fascinating part of his work. He doesn't rely on descriptions from Revelation here, but derives attributes directly from the concept of necessary existence itself. What must be true of a being that cannot not exist?
Okay, so what does he deduce?
Well, first, simplicity. The necessary existent must be utterly simple, meaning it has no parts.
No parts. Why not?
Because if it had parts, its existence would depend on those parts coming together or coexisting. Any kind of dependency makes something contingent. A truly necessary being cannot depend on anything, even its own components. It must be a perfect unity.
Huh. Okay. Utterly simple. What else?
Immateriality. It cannot be physical or material. Matter exists in space and time. It changes. It's composed of parts, all features of contingent existence. The necessary existent must transcend matter, space, and time.
So not part of the physical universe it grounds. It exists outside of that framework.
That's the implication. It's the ground for space and time, not bound by them. Then there's unity.
Meaning there can only be one.
Exactly. He argues there cannot be two necessary existents, because if there were two, there'd have to be something that distinguishes them, right? Some quality one has that the other lacks, or some difference in their nature.
Okay.
But any such distinguishing feature would act as a kind of limitation or composition, implying dependency, which contradicts necessity. Also, what would prevent them from being just parts of a greater necessary reality? True necessity implies absolute uniqueness and singularity.
So one ultimate, indivisible, immaterial reality.
And flowing from that, incomparability. It can't be compared to anything else because there's nothing else like it. It doesn't belong to a genus or species of things. Its very essence is existence, whereas everything else merely has existence. contingently.
Wow, so it's not just a being among others, even a supreme one. It's in a category all its own.
Completely. As Ibn Sina put it, the first has no alike, no contrary, no genus, and no difference. It's known not through senses or comparison, but only through pure intellectual knowledge, through the logic itself.
That's quite a picture. Simple, immaterial, unique, incomparable. It really pushes you beyond everyday thinking about what exists means.
It certainly does. It challenges you to conceive of reality at its most fundamental level, stripped of all the contingent features we're used to.
So let's recap this incredible journey. We started with that huge question, why something rather than nothing?
Ultimate question.
And we followed Ibn Sina's Burhan al-Adequin, his proof of the truthful. We saw how crucial that distinction is, necessary versus contingent, first with truths.
Like bachelors are unmarried versus it rained yesterday.
Right. And then applying that same logic to existence itself, beings that must exist versus beings like us in the universe that just happen to exist.
The wajib al-wujud versus the mumkin al-wujud.
And the core argument. Contingent things exist, they need a cause, they can't cause themselves, and an infinite chain of contingent causes doesn't actually solve the problem.
It just pushes the question back endlessly, leaving only one logical possibility.
The existence of a necessary being, something that grounds the existence of everything else, the wajib al-wujud.
And we saw how he argues even the entire universe, being made of contingent parts, is itself contingent and needs this necessary being as its ultimate explanation.
It provides a purely rational answer to that initial question. Why is there something rather than nothing? Because there must be something whose very nature is to be, the necessary, the eternal, the one, as you put it.
And it's a perspective that kind of reframes everything. The idea that every contingent thing, every fading blossom, every vanishing star, in a sense, points beyond itself.
And whispers that secret. There must be one who cannot not be.
A beautiful way to put it. It suggests the contingency we see everywhere isn't just a random fact, but a clue pointing towards a foundation.
So here's a thought to leave you with as you mull over this deep dive. If our existence, and the existence of everything we know, is fundamentally contingent, truly optional, and if that points, logically, to a necessary being whose essence is existence, what does that actually mean for us?
Yeah. What does it mean to live in a reality grounded not in chance, ultimately, but in necessity? Does it change how you think about purpose or meaning, or just your own place in this vast contingent cosmos that depends on something necessary?
Definitely something to ponder. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.